everyone, it's Heather with Tropica Exotica. It's been a hot minute since I've last recorded a video, so I apologize for that. I think, just like everybody else, I've been dealing with the pandemic and just been trying to get used to the new normal. So I've been taking a break, but I'm back, so hopefully I will be posting on a regular schedule from now on. So today is Sunday, October 25th, 2020. We've been going through this pandemic, I think, since March. So hopefully things will be on the up and up going forward, so it'll be interesting to see how things play out. But I will continue to post videos and talk about spiritual awakening and post crystal videos going forward. So appreciate your patience on that. So one of the things I like to do at the beginning of my videos are kind of talk about some of the recent experiences that I've had, just to kind of share, my own spiritual awakening, where I'm at, and also if there's anything in particular that I've been experiencing related to psychic experiences. Just because when we start opening ourselves up to spiritual awakening, our third eye opens and we start having a lot of different experiences, and a lot of times it can be hard to understand what's happening. And so I just like to share what I've experienced in case it helps other people. So, and I'm just going to talk about, obviously it's been several months since I posted, but I wanted to just share one of the more interesting recent experiences I had. So, it was the middle of the night and my smoke detector went off about 1 in the morning, and I had just replaced the batteries in that smoke detector, so it was very unusual. So it stood out to me, and of course, once that smoke detector goes off, your adrenaline's going and it's very difficult to go back to sleep. So anyway, so that was a little upsetting. And then a little bit later in that morning, about 11 o'clock, I started smelling cigarette smoke. And, that's one of the more rare psychic abilities, which is to pick up scents from spirits. And I kind of just wonder if that wasn't my grandmother visiting me at that time. A lot of times spirits, they can use the electronics around you. They can work with batteries, so they can, wake you up and do stuff like that. So I thought that was very interesting. And another thing that happened recently was I had gone to sleep, and in the middle of the night I felt like something punched me in the stomach. Like it literally felt like 4-finger hand punched me in the stomach and kind of knocked the wind out of me. But what was funny about it was I just went back to sleep. I apparently just am used to this kind of stuff now. Although I've only had something, physically touch me a few times. I think there were a lot of different factors that went into that. I think one was I had been upset that day. So I do feel like I had some negative emotions in my emotional body. And also, I always keep a huge piece of selenite on my nightstand. A long time ago, I watched Teal Swan, and she talked about how she always kept a huge piece of selenite on her nightstand to help keep things away from her, during the evening, during the nighttime. And so I always followed that practice. And then also, I had drank a glass of wine or two, so I'm sure whenever you do that, you release your auric protective field, so you can allow things into your field. And then also, one of the practices that I have not been really good about is, always kind of in the evening clearing your energetic space and having a protective barrier. So I feel like there was a few different reasons why I experienced that. And again, I'm somebody who learns very much by experience, and so I kind of took that as, okay, I'm learning. And I had talked to a psychic a little bit afterwards about that, and they referred to it as a psychic attack. And honestly, I didn't question them further about that, but they basically kind of talked about it being in the realm of mediumship. So when you're kind of opening yourself up to other spirits, I think that that's kind of one of the things that you can experience. And another thing along those kind of lines was, and this was really just a week or so ago, I was going to sleep, and I experience a lot of stuff right as I'm going to sleep and also right as I'm waking up. And I experienced, it was like, you know, when you're going to sleep and your body jerks. So I had that happen like 3 times, and on the 3rd time, it was like these teeth came up, like a mouth of teeth came up like from the bed, like trying to bite me, and I remember kind of like jumping. And it's one of those things where it happened so quick, but it was really just an impression, you know, and the teeth were about the size of like a cat's mouth. And, you know, I don't know what that was. I just feel like, you know, there's stuff in other dimensions that we might not always understand, but they're helping me become more aware of, you know, that I need to make sure that I create protective boundaries around me before I go to bed in the evening. And I'd also seen a post by somebody saying that there was a lot of negative energy that had been stirring up. You know, it's kind of like the battle, the epic battle that goes on between, you know, good and bad, basically. And so, but, you know, as I take on these experiences, I just take them on as learning experiences and I move on. I don't get afraid anymore by any of these things. I just know that, you know, these are helping me learn more about myself, and that we are not alone, and there's more out there than we probably have any clue about. So anyway, so I just wanted to share those few experiences. So on to the topic for today. So this is the 3rd in my last video series on talking about the concept of empaths. So I have a couple other videos out there on being an empath and tips for empaths. So in this last video, I'm going to talk specifically about very specific experiences I've had with other individuals to help you understand that, you know, if you're an empath, that you may have had these things happen to you and may just not be aware of it. So I'm going to share a couple of those experiences. So for empath story number 1, and I just want to talk about, you know, in general, as an empath, you can pick up on other people's energy, and it may not necessarily be somebody, you know, that you're really emotionally close to, but it could be somebody that's in your area. So several years ago, I was working in a workplace, and it was very, very stressful. It was a very stressful time. And so during this time, I remember at one point in the evening, I was standing up in my dining room, and I just had this like super frantic anxiety, and it was a very, very vulnerable feeling. And it was like, you know, the best way I can describe it is kind of like frantic and shaky. And so the emotion that I felt was like, I can't do this anymore. And I mean, I was really just talking about my work, like I can't do this, I can't go in there. It was just like this inner emotion that I couldn't deal with anymore. And so at that time, I was involved with a partner who was able to kind of talk me through what I was experiencing. And so at this time, there was somebody in my work environment who was not very healthy emotionally. And I am not a mental health professional, this is just my own kind of observation. And so anyway, so this person was known for impacting others in the work environment, and not in a good way. People were very fearful of them. There was always this kind of heavy sense of dread or anxiety being around this person. And so, you know, if you're around certain people, and if you're energetically sensitive, you may pick up on their emotions, and you just may not even know about it. And so at the time, my partner kind of helped me understand that, you know, maybe those feelings that you're feeling aren't yours. And so as they were explaining it to me, and I started getting, you know, mad. It's like, wait a minute, you know, I let this other person's energy, you know, get into me, and now, you know, I'm feeling what they're feeling, you know, and I mean, I was about to just quit my job because I just felt like I couldn't do it anymore. And then I realized, you know what, that wasn't even my own emotions. And then they explained to me that, you know, once you release those emotions, that they're basically going to bounce onto somebody else who's also energetically sensitive. And so what ended up happening was there was another person in my work environment who was also very energetically sensitive, and they ended up getting so sick that they ended up in the hospital because they had such anxiety and stress that they started throwing up and were not able to take their normal medications. And so when they came back to work, I explained to them what happened, and, you know, they were really open to that concept. And so, you know, that's something that, you know, I'm not a mental health professional, but I've heard that, you know, that is something that can happen. And so for me, the biggest lesson for me in this is that I started to understand that particular type of emotion that I felt, that was not in my normal realm of emotions. But at the time, you know, you're feeling what you're feeling, you know, and so over time you start to understand, you know, what is a normal emotion for me in a normal state. And, you know, so then you start to recognize these types of things. You know, being an empath, it's a learning curve. I mean, you have to understand that once you're sensitive to energy, that you could pick up on other people's energy. Okay, so empath story number 2. So this one is regarding a particular type of connection called a twin flame. And if you're not familiar with twin flames, I encourage you to go read my blog, heatherburkett.com, and just do Heather Burkett and then twin flame, and there's some articles on there. One of them is about Kundalini activation through meeting twin flame. The other one is about Kundalini activation, dreams, twin flame dreams, snake dreams, and another one is on Kundalini activation, psychic experiences. So, and then I also have videos on those as well. So this type of particular connection is very different, and so you are very much connected on a psychic and telepathic level. And so on this particular example, I'm talking specifically about the fact that I was picking up their energy and it was impacting me, and at the time I did not know that. So during this particular time, I had not talked to my twin flame in over 6 months. And so, you know, all I remember is all of a sudden I just was having a lot of anxiety and I could not sleep. And I mean, it was bad. I mean, it started out at the beginning of the month, and I was, you know, at that time I was sleeping in the guest bedroom, and I remember just tossing and turning. I remember, you know, I had to call in sick several days because I wasn't able to sleep at night. I had gone and bought several different types of over-the-counter sleeping medications and was trying different doses, but it was just a horrible, horrible time. And so at the end of the month, I received an email from my twin flame basically saying that they were no longer going to be at the same work environment that they had left. And at the time, of course, I was shocked because I was like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to see him again, because we had not spoken in over 6 months. And so, but what was ironic about it was just a few days later, I just decided I'm going to go downstairs and get a cup of coffee, and I ran into them. And so I talked to him then, and, you know, he told me that he had been informed at the beginning of the month that he was going to be getting let go. And so a little bit later, I kind of started to connect the dots. I'm like, wait a minute, you know, was my lack of sleep picking up on his own energy and stress and anxiety about losing his job? And so a little while later, you know, I have seen psychics about this experience and others, and I talked to this particular psychic about that experience, and they said yes. They said that's actually called empath ping pong, and they said that it was not fun at all, that basically I was worried about my own situation, my relationship, and my twin flame was worried about, you know, their future and what held, you know, for them. So, you know, it was very stressful. So it's like you worry and you send it back to them, and they worry and they send it back to you. So it's like you just keep on going back and forth. So it was very exhausting. And so that is empath story number 2. So on empath story number 3, I had been driving into work one day, and I was in my normal state of mind. I was kind of calm. I don't get super excited. I don't get, you know, super depressed. So I was just in my kind of normal, you know, state of mind. And then all of a sudden, I just started feeling this frantic feeling again, where it's like all of a sudden I'm like, I can't do this anymore. I can't do this anymore. So as I was driving down the road, I just had this frantic feeling. You know, it's very odd, but it's basically just, I can't do this anymore. And it just kind of came out of nowhere. And so, you know, I was on the highway and I was literally thinking about turning around and going back home. That's how distressful this emotion was. And so, because I'd had experiences before, I actually thought, hey, wait a minute, maybe this isn't my emotion. And so I started to, you know, kind of talk through it and go, you know, if this isn't my energy, it needs to leave my energetic field immediately. And I started doing some energy clearing practices, such as imagining a white light coming down and getting rid of these negative emotions that were bothering me. And I actually have a video on energy clearing practices if you would like to check that out. So as I was driving down the road, you know, I started to feel better, and I started to think about it and, you know, wonder, like, whose emotions could I be picking up on? And I started to think, you know, it might be one of my friends who I kind of have somewhat of a more psychic connection with. And, you know, people that are more psychic, they probably pick up on each other's energy easier. So later on the day, I asked her, I said, you know, did you happen to have any kind of anxiety producing situation earlier this morning? And they explained to me what happened, and I won't explain what they said because that was personal, but it was definitely something that would have been very distressful. And so I told them what happened and how I picked up on that energy. So it was very exciting because I started to understand that I'm getting better at recognizing when I'm picking up on other people's emotions. So I was really happy about that. So one of the things that I just want to share is, you know, the lessons that I've learned through some of these experiences is, you know, as you become more self-aware of your own kind of emotional range, you'll start to recognize when an emotion that comes kind of out of nowhere and doesn't really match any situation that you're currently dealing with. That's one way you can tell. But also, just because we're coming into, you know, this ascension process and spiritual awakening, we're going to be more aware of energy and other, you know, potentially picking up on other people's energy. And so this was something that I think my abilities have kind of increased as I've become more awake spiritually. And so as we understand that, then we start learning different tools and techniques that we need in order to, you know, mitigate that experience. So one of the things I'd recommend is learning about energy clearing practices, so that you know, every day that you start off and make sure that you clean your energetic field, and that you also put up boundaries. So as we go through this process, we just become more aware and more centered in our own energy, so that we're not bombarded by other people's energy. So that's it for today. I really appreciate your patience. I know it's been a while since I've posted, and I also want to thank all of my subscribers, so stay tuned for more videos. Thanks, bye-bye.